Welcome, curious souls, to the Macabre Emporium, your sanctuary for the unusual, the mysterious, and the appalling.
Step through our cryptic doorway into a world where secrets whisper and enigmas come to life.
I'm David.
And I'm Sarah.
Together, we're your custodians of the macabre, guiding you through tales that defy the ordinary.
Discover the untold stories, from lesser-known cases of true crime to the bizarre events that captivate us.
Join us on a journey to the shadows where the mainstream fades and the extraordinary beckons.
So whether you seek the bizarre, the eerie, or the chillingly obscure,
you're in for a treat here at Macabre Emporium.
Welcome back to Macabre Emporium. This is episode 91.
And if this is your first time joining us, welcome, because I don't have some weird oddball thing to say this week.
We're missing the wackadoodle.
And if you're a wackadoodle, welcome. There we go.
Welcome.
So we kind of have an announcement this week. Wednesday on Twitch, we are going to try something a little different with both of us.
Yes.
Because I know you guys that do come participate on our Twitch channel. Sarah jumps in on the chat every once in a while, but probably every day this week or until it's finished on Twitch, Sarah's going to be part of the stream because we bought the Nightmare Before Christmas Lego set.
Yeah.
And we're going to build it on stream and we're going to put it in our 7-foot tall coffin shelf that sits behind me on stream.
Yes.
So that's going to start at 8 p.m. Eastern time, Wednesday night until the thing's finished. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it'll probably be done within those 3 days. Maybe.
So, after you're done listening to this episode, you got something to look forward to this evening.
Yeah.
Duh.
Yep.
Because we all know you listen to this as soon as it comes out.
Yep. So I know some people do. I know Minnie and Noodle, they listen to it day of. And Schmeezing, he listens to the next day when he's at work. And
yeah.
That's the only ones I really know of that listen right away off the bat. I think, no, Matt Kolinsky from the Real Creature Feature podcast, he does. I think he generally listens day of release. Which, if you haven't checked them out, go check him out because he has a background in biology and him and his buddies discuss if like mythological creatures and creatures from movies could actually be real, along with actual cryptids too.
Huh. Have they done like Swamp Thing or anything like that?
It's been a minute since I haven't been able to listen to them because I can't have earbuds at work and trying to catch up on everybody. Then I get behind on one person and whatnot.
Yep, I feel that.
It's not a lack of me not trying to listen to you guys. It's because work cut off headphones for speakers and earbuds and everything at work from everybody. So.
How rude.
So.
We've got a couple of cool events coming up.
Yep, one we're not going to say now. It's going to be a surprise. Some of you, one person, he's in the know because it's too exciting and I told him anyway.
Yeah.
So that's about it. And of course, our inner circle.
Yeah.
Our Macabre Emporium inner circle, they'll know by this comes out.
And the second one is in late July.
Yep.
We're finally going to go see Ghost.
Yep.
We've only been wanting and saying we want to go see them for years. And this July marks our 10 years being together.
Yep. Doesn't seem like it.
So we're going to do it.
Yep. Because our first anniversary, we went to go see who?
Slipknot.
And, she doesn't remember who else was there. Another big named person.
Marilyn Manson, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And, they're kind of better known now, too. They were the opener for the opener.
Was it Of Mice and Men
yes,
or some
it
shit
was.
like that? Yeah,
yep.
I didn't like them.
Yeah, I didn't like them live. I've heard a couple of their songs studio-wise. I liked it much better. It could just been our location sound system there at, DTE. AKA really Pine Knob.
It is Pine Knob again.
I know. Oh, is it again?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I was figuring you were coming with it. It's going to be Pine Knob. Like whatever the hell it is down in Indianapolis, it changes its name every 3 years. It's always Deer Creek to Hoosiers, that have lived here long enough.
It was Pine Knob, then went to DTE, and then they changed it back.
See, and the thing is, I'm pretty sure I got Sarah trained to call the Ruoff or Cliff Center, whatever it is this year, to call it Deer Creek or whatever, because it's how I referred to her as.
Oh.
One point. I'm pretty sure I've heard you call it Deer Creek when talking about
Might have. I'm not sure. But yeah, we get to go see Ghost,
Yep.
and I'm stupid excited about it.
Yep. So
Especially now that he's reinvented the Papa and
Yep.
he's purple.
Yep. It was meant to be at this time.
I know. I'm so excited.
Yep.
It's going to be good.
Yep. And we got some pretty decent seats because she showed me a picture from where the seats we got are. It seems pretty close, but not too close, I guess, or whatever. But we're also elevated too, I guess we put it.
We're in like the second balcony, but
Mhm.
we're off to the side of the stage. But the view from that seat, or at least that area of the seat,
Yeah.
was still pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, for us doing this, which is probably also a good thing that we're not directly in front of the PA system that way.
Uh-huh.
So,
I don't want to go hard of hearing.
Right. So maybe that's something we need to invest in is earplugs now, because
Fuck that.
there's special ones types for that to help reduce decibels, but doesn't block music. I've looked into them before for us, but that back then we weren't really in a financial spot to do that. But time has progressed and things with bills and all that good stuff that we're able to buy those things now.
Yeah.
And being in our 40s. We need to be more concerned about keeping our hearing, especially doing something like this.
Well, that's true.
So, but enough of our rambling on with my PhD in yapology.
PhD in yapology. That's funny.
This week is going to be a Sarah episode.
Sarah Sode. 'Tis I.
Yep. And I'm going to guess it's probably true crime.
It is. And I want to start this off by saying huge, huge thank you to our dear friend, Lindsay, aka Noodle.
Yep.
If it wasn't for her, this episode would not be happening. I've had a couple of shitty weeks at work and lacked severe motivation.
Yep.
So, yeah. Thank you for your help. Again, if it wasn't for her, this wouldn't be happening this week.
Yep.
Thank you, nudes. Love your face.
So with all that said, are you ready to get going?
Yes.
All right, let's get going.
Joseph and Loretta Grimes had 7 children. 7.
So, what did you guys like to do?
Fuck.
Apparently.
Barbara, Patricia, Shirley, Joseph, Jimmy, Teresa, Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, and Mike.
Don't even expect me to remember who all those damn kids are.
Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, and Mike was a joke.
Okay.
You don't know where that's from?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
I don't.
If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. And they had another one, but name was elusive. And by 1951, Loretta was raising all 7 of them on her own after divorcing Joseph. Joseph had been a truck driver and is not mentioned pretty much anywhere in newspapers from 1956 or 57 or in any of today's articles. So, can kind of assume with that he wasn't really in the picture.
So I'm guessing that's the dad. Or is that one of the 90 kids?
Yeah, Joseph was the dad.
Okay.
Joseph is dad. Loretta is mom.
All right.
In 1956, Barbara was a sophomore at the Thomas Kelly High School, and Patricia, who was known as Petey, don't ask me why, was the 7th grader at St. Maurice Catholic School. Pause it. I'm clicky, I can hear. Barbara and Patricia were close in age and both had a massive obsession with Elvis Presley, as did most young girls at that time.
Right.
As did you at that time. They were described as inseparable and good students.
She thought she could throw in an old joke and didn't think I'd catch on to it.
It was the look of recognition and annoyance that was chef's kiss.
But you know what's funny? At the time of recording this, her birthday is less than a month away now.
Shut up.
And she's going to be as old as I am.
till November.
Yeah, still counts. But anyway.
In an article written by Chicago crime reporter Robert T. Loughran, in an article written by Chicago crime reporter Robert T. Loughran in February 1957, in the Anderson Herald, Loughran stated that on December 28th of 1956, two girls had decided to go to the movies. They left their home, located at 3634th South Damon Avenue in Chicago's McKinley Park neighborhood, after dinner to go see... What do you think they went to see?
So if Elvis was big at the time, it was probably one of his movies.
Uh-huh.
I want to guess, say, South Pacific.
No. They went to see Love Me Tender.
Okay.
At the Brighton Theater, located at 4223 Archer Avenue in Brighton Park neighborhood. It said that they left home around 7:30 p.m. and had promised their mother that they would be home by midnight. The theater was only about a mile and a half away, and the girls are thought to have left home with about $2.50 collectively. Loretta had told Barbara to keep 50 cents in case they stayed for a second showing. It's not confirmed how they got to the theater, but in the past they usually took the bus or just walked since it wasn't that far. They had already seen the movie in the theater
97 times.
10 times. 10 times, and this would be their 11th time going. Unfortunately, it would also be their last. After they left Brighton Theater, they were never seen alive again. Loretta, the mom, had sent their older sister Teresa and younger brother Joey to meet them at the bus stop and walk them home. The two of them waited around, but the girls never got off the bus. They actually wound up waiting for 3 buses that stopped, one after another.
Right.
Just to kind of make sure that they
didn't miss their first one.
Yeah. But they never got off the bus, so those two went back home to tell their mom. Mom immediately knew something wasn't right. She tried calling friends and neighbors, but wasn't successful in finding the girls any route she, traveled.
Right.
So she wound up calling the Chicago Police Department and reported them missing, and this was at 2:15 a.m. on December 29th. According to Ray Johnson, who was researching the Grimes' case for a chapter in his book and became obsessed, the police at first did not treat this as a missing persons case. They believed the girls ran away, and it took almost a week for them to take this case seriously. In an article in Rare by Mariah Gill, they said that the search began immediately when the girls weren't found. It was then believed by the police that they had ran off to find Elvis.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And for those that, believe in the Wikipedias, it is corroborated there too. That is what was believed out of the other sites that were, used.
Right. No, my look of confusion on my face is, so the police want to say they went off to go find Elvis after watching the movie.
Uh-huh.
So, why I was thinking is, was there even any reports of him being in town on tour or what?
I don't know.
You guys weren't able to find anything? Okay. It's that might make more sense if it was hey, Elvis is in fucking Chicago.
Right.
We're going to go fucking find him. But no,
right.
If he's not, it is what it is.
Yep.
Because then, I'm sure you had the urge to go find Jack Black after watching School of Rock or one of his other movies.
Right. Within days, the news of the disappearance had spread so wide that Elvis Presley himself pleaded on the radio. If you're good Presley fans, you'll go home and ease your mother's worries. And this was when he was first informed of the disappearance. And this was when he was first informed of the disappearance and when it was still believed that they were runaways.
Right. And this was in the 1960s, correct?
No.
Or the 50s?
I
forgot what you said, 50s or 60s.
57.
Okay, so this was like super young Elvis then.
Yes. Like, probably first came out Elvis.
Right.
One of the largest missing persons cases in the history of Cook County was underway. Hundreds of police officers were assigned full-time to search the entire city. A task force was created and more than 15,000 flyers were distributed, and parishioners of the Sisters Church gathered $1,000 in reward money. According to an article written by Knox Kiernan in the Columbia Chronicle in 2019, as of 2019, that search was still the largest in Chicago.
Yeah.
Again, in 2019.
Right.
I don't think, not that I can think of, remember something bigger than that. You'd think if something bigger than that had happened, we would remember that.
Yeah.
As a result of the cooperation from everyone, 300,000 people would end up being questioned, with over 2,000 subjected to serious interrogation. Because of the extensive media appeals asking the sisters to come home and for eyewitnesses to come forward, Chicago Police Department started getting many calls with alleged sightings. Ann Pobich, a witness in a restaurant near the movie theater, said that she saw the sisters on the night of December 28th. According to the Mount Vernon Register News on January 25th, 1957, Ann told Police Chief Joseph Lohman that she saw them with two men, one who resembled Elvis and another who was short and dark-haired. So, I can almost guarantee that there were men at this movie theater that were dressed up, had their hair done like Elvis.
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of guys that did pompadours at the time because Elvis was a hot thing. So
pompadour. Thank
you know, it was the going trend of the time. You know, like.
Yep.
I'm trying to think of other, like, in the 80s, Flock of Seagulls, like, that was a thing.
Yes.
Well, maybe it wasn't really a thing because we were too young to remember the 80s, but, you know, it was something showcased in the movie The Wedding Singer, like, the flight attendant having the Flock of Seagulls hair. Like, a celebrity does this thing. Everybody's going to do it.
Look at all of Madonna's phases and all of the chicks that did all of Madonna's phases.
Right. Or, you know, one that, you know, coincides with our generation, Jersey Shore.
Ugh.
I know. I knew you were going to make that sound, but I'm just saying. And look how many that did the Snooki haircut and everything, because when that show was like super popular.
Yeah.
Who knows? I might have just called out somebody. One person in particular without trying. And I'm sure I'll hear about it. Yes, they had a Jersey Shore phase.
Oh, I believe it. Many different witnesses said they saw the girls. Some teenagers that were also at the theater that night said they saw the young girls getting into a car with young men who resembled Elvis, and the vehicle was consistently described as a Mercury by the witnesses.
So we got Elvis driving a Mercury with the Elvis that they got from the Five and Dime.
Yes, Five and Dime.
Or the Woolworth, I don't know. Maybe the Woolworth more because of it being... I wouldn't say the Woolworth was like the dollar store of its time, but
right.
The term Five and Dime would be, but anyhow. Tried to make a joke and I failed.
Okay, you're also making the chair squeak. A bus driver, Joseph Smoke, thought he had seen them getting off of his bus at 11:05 p.m. A security guard from the northwest side named Jack Franklin said he gave directions to two girls who he believed to be the sisters in the early morning of December 29th. And later, on December 29th, another classmate, Catherine Borak, said she saw the girls walking by with two other unrecognizable girls at 6:30 p.m. while she was inside of a restaurant. January 1st, Robert Curran said he saw the girls on his bus at 2:30 p.m. Even later, George Pope, a night clerk at a hotel, said he refused them a room at 9 p.m. on January 2nd, and 3 Kresge employees thought they had seen the girls listening to Elvis records at the record counter at Kresge on January 3rd. January 5th, police received a bunch of reports from Chicago areas and the suburbs. A Minnesota woman swore she met the sisters in a Nashville bus station on January 9th. And that was the latest and last sighting that was reported. In an article by Tamara Schaefer for the Chicago Reader, she said that Loretta had been sent a series of ransom letters that told her to go to Milwaukee on January 12th. So the FBI escorted her, and she was supposed to lay $1,000 next to her on a church pew in a downtown Catholic church. And according to the letters that Barbara would get, the money... What? Oh, okay. According to the letters, Barbara would get the money, then leave to deliver it. And then she and Patricia would both return together. Nothing came of this, and it was later discovered that all of the letters came from an institutionalized mental patient. Yep, I'm leaving it in. That was a wordy ass sentence.
Yeah, a little bit.
There was a news article that was found that said the institutionalized patient was demanding $5,000. So it did corroborate that this actually happened, but it's not certain if it was $1,000 or $5,000 that they actually demanded.
Sources varied, basically.
Yes. In the same article, it stated that on January 14th, the parents of a classmate of Patricia's received 2 calls around midnight. Wallace and Ann Tolston woke up to the calls, and allegedly they heard someone asking for... Wallace and Ann Tolston woke up to the calls, and allegedly they heard someone asking for Sandra, their daughter. The caller soon hung up, and Anne was convinced it was Patricia. On January 15th, police got a bizarre call from a man saying that the girls' bodies were in Santa Fe Park, which is just outside of Chicago on the southwest outskirts. He told them that he saw it in a dream. The call was traced back to a liquor store where they picked up Walter Kranz. He was a large man, 6'5", weighing approximately 225 pounds. He was a steam fitter. Do you know what that is?
Not exactly.
Pause. So essentially a steam fitter is someone that works on repairs, builds, like heating systems.
Okay.
So the pipes, all of that.
So you're HVAC technician before they were HVAC technicians.
Pretty much is the way that it translates to me.
Right.
He obviously became a prime suspect at that point and was given a lie detector test. During the test, he stuck to his story of it all being a dream, and he insisted that his soul was clear. Elvis's plea that I told you about earlier.
Right. Yeah, keep going. I'm just saying, right, you're about to plea. But anyway.
Elvis's plea came on January 19th, and only 3 days later, the girls' bodies were found. On January 22nd, 1957, a construction worker, Leonard Prescott, was driving east on German Church Road in Burr Ridge. He thought he saw flesh-colored mannequins on the side of the road, like on the opposite side of a guardrail.
Right.
And he described it and noticed, just flesh-colored things in the ditch. Assumed it was mannequins.
So there must have been like a huge thing throwing mannequins down the embankment at this time, if that's his first thought.
When he saw those things, he went home and got his wife and went back. Noodle made mention that this was a smart move on his part because most people wouldn't go get somebody else and go back.
Right.
They usually just wouldn't go back at all.
Right.
With his wife, Marie, in tow, they approached the unknown items. Marie fainted when they discovered that they were actually real bodies. They called police and it was confirmed that they were bodies. They called the police and it was confirmed that they were the bodies of Barbara and Patricia. The bodies were completely nude and frozen. When found, Barbara was lying on her side with her legs slightly drawn up toward her torso. Imagine like kind of a loose fetal position.
Okay.
Patricia was on her back with her body covering Barbara's head and her own head turned really sharply to the right. Wikipedia says that both girls had bruising and signs of blunt force trauma to their faces and bodies. But in an article from the Chicago Tribune from January 24th, it says during the autopsies that there were no found signs of external injury except for 3 small superficial penetration wounds. I'm going to read that sentence. But in an article from the Chicago Tribune from January 27th, But in an article from the Chicago Tribune from January 24th, it says during the autopsies, they found no signs of outward injury except for 3 small superficial penetration wounds on Patricia's chest. The wounds were consistent with the stabbing from an ice pick. During the autopsy, they also found no signs of sexual molestation or abuse. Although Barbara had recently had sexual intercourse, there were no signs of strangulation or poison, and no real idea of how they actually died. They knew right away the bodies had at least been there since snowfall, which would have been like January 9th to 10th.
So the snow had kept them covered.
Yes. Like I said, their bodies were frozen.
Right.
So cold as fuck. It was January.
Yeah. It's cold as fuck in the Midwest.
Yeah. Their tissue samples had to be sent out to a lab for further testing to see how long they actually had been out there. The condition of the bodies led them to believe that they were thrown in a ditch shortly after they died and were not kept anywhere else for any significant length after their death. Their bodies were covered in rodent bites, so I wonder if they were starting to be nipped out like after they were frozen.
Right.
The autopsies were performed by 3 forensic pathologists, and they could not come to an agreement on how the girls died. Their death certificates list their cause of death as murder, and it was listed on the autopsy report that they died of shock and exposure, which was only determined by counting out all of their options. They said the puncture wounds happened post-mortem, and after the test came back, the food in their stomach matched what Loretta said their dinner was and their snacks were the night they disappeared. So they determined the girls had to have died within about 5 hours from the last time they were seen. Toxicology reports show that they had no alcohol or drugs in their system, and it was mentioned that their bodies were remarkably clean for having no clothing on. Police searched a 4-mile area around where the bodies were found, and they found 2 blouses, a belt, and a sweater. But when presented to Loretta, she said none of those items belonged to her girls. This search... Huh?
A 4-mile radius around the body, that's pretty far out there to
Yeah.
try and make a connection with the clothing. I mean, they found that they tried, but still 4 miles out.
Yeah.
So to give you an idea, like how 4 miles from where the Emporium is, it's about halfway to where I work.
Yeah.
To give you an idea.
Yeah. It's a ways. Their search was actually highly criticized because it consisted of over 160 police officers and was pretty unorganized, so it was believed later that they may have ruined possible evidence. But in the Chicago Tribune from January 24th, it is said that police covered all the ground with building paper and took many samples and swabs from the area. On January 24th, 30 deputies from both the Chicago Police Department and County Highway Police searched all the homes nearest where the bodies were found, trying to find the girls' clothing. No clothing belonging to either girl was ever found. The location where the girls were found was actually only a 1/4 mile from Santa Fe Park, where Kranz predicted they would be. Where he dreamed they would be.
Yeah.
They started comparing his print to the ransom notes Loretta had received, but there was no match. At this point, police gave Kranz another lie detector test, as he was still the main suspect. He passed, except for there being disturbances only when he asked if he had seen the bodies after they had died. According to Sergeant Walter Gare, he was actually asked the 3 questions. According to Sergeant Walter Gare, he was actually asked the question 3 times and worded differently each time. Each time would have the same result. But when asked if he knew the girls and who killed them, it registered that he told the truth when he said no. They were also comparing Kranz's handwriting to that on the extortion notes Loretta had received. They were written in a block letter, and it's reported that they were found to be similar. Not the same, just similar. At this time, a taxi driver, Reno Voldus Eccles, told police he saw the sisters in a restaurant 3 weeks before their bodies were found. He said they were with 2 men in a booth between 4 and 5 a.m. The owner of the restaurant, Miss Minnie Duros, confirmed his sighting, but said she did not report it because so many reports were coming in. When shown a photo lineup, she picked out the girls. No hesitation.
Right.
Miss Duros had described the girls and said the taller one, which was Patricia, to be so sick or drunk that she was staggering. The 4 of them had sat in a booth for a while and they listened to Elvis, and then they went outside. The taller girl came back in, laid her head on the table, and they were trying to get her in the car, but she kept saying that she didn't want to go. The other 3 came back in, and Miss Duros actually told them to leave the girl alone because she was sick, but the 4 of them wound up leaving anyways. It was during questioning with Miss Duros that the police discovered a possible new suspect. She told police that she saw the girls with a former employee who worked as a dishwasher named Benny, who they began to search for ASAP as possible. Shortly after the release of the autopsy results, the lead coroner, Walter McCarran's chief investigator, Harry Glows, I love it, came forward and challenged the findings. He believed that the girls did show signs of molestation and that their faces had obvious signs of being injured.
Go.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
His big ass is in the way. I can't see it. Chief of Detectives Patrick Dealey did confirm at the time that the older girl, Barbara, had been molested sexually. Glows actually challenged their time of death. Glows also challenged their time of death, saying that the contents of the stomach did not match what they had last eaten. He also believed that the girls' bodies were not left there until January 7th or 8th or January 13th, and that they were only unconscious or had just died. His theory was based on the weather conditions and the fact that the girls had on... His theory was based on the weather conditions and the fact that the girls had a layer of ice around their bodies that he thinks could not have happened if they were not warm when the snow was first there. And there was not enough snow to create the ice before January 7th. It comes to no surprise that Harry Glows was then fired by Walter, which sparked a huge controversy, which seemed to pull away from the girl's murder. On January 28th, there was a closed casket funeral for both girls simultaneously. The police did find Benny, the one that... What the fuck was her name? Was it Duros? Not Duros. Was it Duros? Yes. Okay, you didn't pause, did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So the police did find Benny, the ex-dishwasher at the restaurant that Miss Duros was at.
Mm-hmm.
Edward Bedwell was a 21-year-old illiterate Skid Row drifter who worked as a dishwasher frequently and was from Paris, Tennessee. He was questioned extensively, and on January 28th, he was arrested and charged with the murders of Barbara and Patricia. The arrest followed his signing of a typed statement on January 28th where he detailed and confessed to the murders. Benny's statement was laid out to the Chicago Tribune on Monday, January 28th, 1957, as follows. January 7th, Benny meets the sisters at Harold's Club, and they were with a man he only knows as Frank. The four of them go to the Crest Hotel, where they couple off, and Patricia stays with Benny. January 8th, the couples go to Madison Street and drink. January 9th, Frank and Barbara go to the West End Hotel, and Benny and Patricia go to a house on Washington Boulevard run by a woman named Lorraine. When it says run by a woman, I wonder if that was like brothel. That's when I hear of a house being run, like that's the first thing that pops into my head.
Right, or it's like a halfway house because that one lady, I think it was in California, that they'd kill men and then like still collect her checks. I don't remember her name off the top of my head.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
She was like called like Granny. I don't, not the Granny Ripper.
Dorothea Puente.
I believe
was that her
that's
name? Yeah.
But she had another name, Granny something.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. January 10th, Benny and Patricia go to West End Hotel and get a room. January 11th to 12th, they all stayed 2 nights at 19 North Racine Avenue. January 13th, the group all leave and go to Madison Street to drink again.
But oh, sounds.
January 13th, the group all leave and go to Madison Street to drink again. Frank leaves at some point and returns with a car. They all go for a ride, then to a restaurant, then they drive and park near where the bodies were found. The group have all been drinking in the car, and then the men try to have sex with the girls. The girls resist, and then there's a fight. Benny says he hit Patricia on the chin harder than he meant to, and he was not paying attention to see how Frank hit Barbara, but she was dead too. They then disrobed the girls and dumped the bodies over the highway guardrail. They separated after this. Frank took the clothes. Frank was described as being 5'9", weighing around 150 pounds with light brown hair. He was described as a salesman for a photographic studio. That sounds like a tiny dude.
Mm-hmm.
The owner of Harold's Club, Harold Perlman, and a bartender, Fred Russo, both said that Benny and the girls were not in the bar on January 7th. Benny was a frequent patron, and they knew and recognized him easily. So are they covering for him? Or is he lying?
I don't know, but I'm sure you're about to tell us.
Another bartender said Benny and a man friend... Another bartender said Benny and a man... God damn it! I'm putting extra letters to these fucking words. Another bartender said Benny and a man matching Frank's description were in the bar in late December with 2 Indian girls, but he refused to serve them because they could not prove their age. There was this... God damn it. There was a second sighting of Benny, Frank, and 2 Indian girls in another tavern called the Green Front. Leroy Williams, a bellboy at the Crest Hotel, said that Benny had registered there several times with different girls, but when shown pictures of the Grimes sisters, he did not recall ever seeing them there with Benny. Obviously, all of that combined with autopsy reports, there are definitely discrepancies in his confession. Loretta was skeptical, to say the least, right from the beginning with his whole shenanigans.
Right.
She didn't believe that her girls would just go out and hang out with random ass men, especially at a bar. She knew her girls wouldn't follow them back to a hotel and then another bar. But police thought the girls might have been swayed by Benny's resemblance to Elvis.
Right, of course.
And remember, the first witnesses that came out and said, hey, we saw them like out and about
with this guy that looks
with
like
this
Elvis.
guy that looked like Elvis.
And I'm sure he practiced and practiced to get that impersonation down so he could get whatever he wanted.
Probably for those young, impressionable girls.
Are you Elvis? Yeah, I am, little lady. Even though I went Johnny Bravo there at the end.
Johnny Bravo.
Actually, I went Johnny Bravo the whole thing, really.
Yeah. According to the original autopsy, Benny's story did not line up at all. With the stomach contents showing that the last meal was what Loretta gave them, they had to have died within an hour or so of leaving the movie or have eaten the exact same thing they had before they left, which was highly unlikely, especially given that Benny said the girls had hot dogs at the restaurant that they were at.
Mm-hmm.
No hot dogs were found in their stomach. Also, toxicology showed no alcohol in their system. So, Benny obviously lied about that because he said that they were out drinking at a bar. Then they went to the hotel. Then they went back to a bar and they were out drinking. So, that's... You can't fake having alcohol not be in your system.
Reports don't lie, guy.
Right. Benny even took the police on a tour of everywhere they went and exactly what happened and where. The trip took 3 hours and was over 50 miles of traveling, and they were followed by hundreds of gawkers while Benny tried to just smile and hide how uncomfortable he was. On January 27th, Sacaro police apprehended a suspect who matched the description of Frank that Benny gave. His name was Richard Whittemire. He was 28 years old and was picked up from a tip from a waitress. She had called the police and said Whittemire threatened her. When police searched his room, they found Benny's address written on a D&L restaurant calendar where he worked as a dishwasher on and off. Because, holding down a job just is fucking difficult. And written a second time on a piece of paper. Anyways. When questioned, Whittemire admitted to being a friend of Benny's, but soon changed his story to saying he didn't like him at all. It became apparent that they were closer than he admitted when they found an unfinished letter addressed to Whittemire's mother saying he was going to invite Benny to their family home for the weekend. Whittemire admitted, oh my God. Whittemire admitted to nothing and had hazy memories of being with Benny. He said that Benny was chummy with everyone at the D&L and mentioned a few times that they should get some girls into some hotel rooms, but Whittemire's always declined. So he wound up going to Chicago for questioning. Whittemire could not be broken down, and soon 2 Indian girls, Irene and Carol, came forward and said they were the girls that Benny and Frank Whittemire could not be broken, and soon 2 Indian girls, Irene and Carol, came forward and said they were the girls who were with Benny and Frank. Miss Duro said she had seen Irene with Benny, but she knew it was not Irene that she saw him with on January 6th. When confronted again, Benny changed his story again and said that Frank was William Cole Willingham. When questioned, Willingham said he was with Benny and 2 girls, but they were not the Grimes sisters and there was no murder involved. Benny also switched up his story, saying he was coerced. On January 31st, during his sentencing hearing, he testified that he was tricked and bullied into confessing. He said that the police told him he would only be charged with disorderly conduct if he admitted to the killings.
Hold on, how the hell do you... How do you get disorderly conduct out of that? How do you get disorderly conduct out of murder? What the fuck?
I don't know. Back in the day, I guess. He said he signed the statement because I was scared and they told me about getting off easy. He also testified that the questioning went on for 4 days, and the Chicago Tribune from January 28th said that he was actually in custody for 5 days with no attorney, and that the Illinois Supreme Court looked on this with disfavor. That's probably why. Because they fucked up.
Yeah. Oh, God. It's so fucking stupid. This is like why, I've been recently watching a lot of a YouTuber with the name of Brandon Rogers, and he has one of the characters that he doesn't play it, but it's Detective Penelope Perez, Detective PP, so you can shorten it up so she's not inconvenienced to saying her name to you. She, this fits the profile of that fucking detective right now. Even in one of the videos, it's like, oh, the killer's left bloody footprints, and it was her walking through the blood. She's like, don't tell my supervisor.
God.
Yeah. It's basically the same fucking thing going on here.
In the hearing room, Loretta Grimes told Ethel Bradbury, Benny's mother, that she did not think her boy did this and how sorry she was that this was happening. At the same time, a couple of boys from the neighborhood of the Grimeses said they saw the girls playing in the doorway while walking home. Earl Zastro and Edward Lorden said they were playing a game and were only 2 blocks from their home on December 28th around 11:30 p.m. Eventually, the state had to face facts, or the fact that they had no facts, and let Benny go. On February 6, 1957, Benny was released on a $20,000 bond. The mayor of Paris, Tennessee, his hometown, met him at the Palmer House Hotel and told him the city of Paris believed in his innocence and offered him a steady job if he came home. His attorney said he would not let Benny fall back into his old Skid Row ways, and he was going to seek to have all criminal charges dropped and threatened a defamation lawsuit against Sheriff Joseph Lohman. So his hometown basically came to pull his ass back and say, if you come back with us, we're going to scrub all charges from your name and give you a job.
What the hell is going on here?
It does seem suspect that Benny was illiterate and could barely sign his name and struggled to sign his full name on court papers, yet was comfortable signing a typed confession. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't type it himself. He didn't read it. He couldn't read it. So he might not have even fully understood what he was signing his name to. And it was probably not the first time or last time that someone desperate and on a lower IQ level was tricked by the police.
Right.
Which is probably also why they gave him the opportunity to get that way lesser charge. They just wanted to be able to put that blame on somebody.
Right.
Between all the mixed sightings and no physical evidence, they had nothing against Benny except his confession, which did not line up with the autopsy reports and time of death. Also, it was proven that he was at work at Ajax Consolidated in Cicero from 4 p.m. December 28th to 10:30 a.m. December 29th. So, with the autopsy report, proven that he's at work at that time, couldn't have been him.
Yeah, and Cicero is not that close to Chicago in the first place.
Right. Loretta received many terrorizing phone calls, but one stuck out to her more than any of the others. In May of 1957, she received an anonymous call from someone who claimed to have killed her daughters. What really got to her was when they said, "I know something about your little girl that no one else knows, not even the police." The smallest girl's toes were crossed at the feet. The caller then laughed and hung up. She confirmed that there was a deformity on Patricia's feet. In November of 1958, a 15-year-old girl named Bonnie Lee Scott was found murdered less than 10 miles from where the Grimes sisters were found. The day after her body was found, Loretta received another call The day after her body was found, Loretta received another phone call from someone who claimed responsibility for Bonnie's murder. This time they said, "I've committed another perfect crime." This is another one of those cops This is another one those cops won't be able to solve, and they're not going to blame Bedwell or Barry Cook. Loretta was sure this was the same person who had called her in May about her own daughters. Eventually, police arrested Charles Melquist for the murder of Bonnie, and he admitted to it, telling them he revisited the body multiple times, and it was one of the times that he had cut her head off. Police did make some connection between Bonnie and the Grimes sisters' murders, but Belquist never questioned. I'm rereading that whole thing.
Okay.
Police did make some connection between Bonnie and the Grimes sisters' murders, but Belquist was never questioned about the Grimes sisters. Ray Johnson, the Chicago history cop that I mentioned earlier, believes that Melquist is a strong possibility for a number of reasons. One, the phone call to Loretta before the murder of Bonnie Lee Scott, and then after the murder of Bonnie Lee Scott. Um, Detective Sheldon Teller was one of the lead investigators in the Grimes case, while he was also selling narcotics for mob boss Sam Giancana. Sheldon Teller was using an informant in his narcotics cases who was a 19-year-old former Army veteran named Chuck. Sheldon Teller was one of the first people through the door of Melquist's home during the execution of the search warrant and retrieved Melquist's telephone book, which contained the names of at least 2 neighbors of the Grimes girls. Melquist, whose family did not have much money, was represented by Sam Giancani's attorney, Robert McDonald, who later married Giancani's daughter Antoinette. So there's that connection. A 3-pronged fork was found in the trunk of Melquist's car. Remember, Patricia had the 3-prong,
Right. That they said was a nice pick.
And they were evenly spaced, and that would have fit her wounds.
Right.
That was found in the trunk of his car. Melquist was identified by a neighbor of the Grimes girls as having been in the Grimes house the day the girls went to the movies. A government psychiatrist stated that Melquist had the exact personality of someone who would have committed crimes against the Grimes girls. Melquist's method of rendering his victims unconscious by using a military hold to cut off blood flow to the brain. Like he would have done that.
Right.
He used this technique on many of his prior girlfriends who didn't die. They were left with red blotches on their faces from They were left with red blotches on their face from the small capillaries bursting.
Right.
Like when you puke too hard or you cough too hard.
Right.
The Grimes girls had this type of bruising on their faces, and they thought initially it was from being beaten, but the autopsy ruled out being physically beaten. But they couldn't rule out suffocation as a possible cause of death. Since the Grimes girls had no trace of physical trauma or, anything in their toxicology report, their official that was me trying to say official.
I know.
Since the Grimes girls had no trace of physical trauma and toxicology results were negative, their official cause of death was shock and exposure to cold temperatures. The location where the Grimes girls were found was a very short distance to where Bonnie Lee Scott's body was also found. Melquist was found guilty of the murder of Bonnie and was sentenced to 99 years in prison. He served just over 11 and was then released. He ended up getting married and had 2 children. He ended up divorcing his wife and died in 2010. Ray Johnson has been working on a documentary that he hopes will bring more awareness and hopefully someone... I'm at the end, don't worry. Ray Johnson has been working on a documentary that he hopes will bring more awareness and hopefully someone will come forward with information. He does believe that Melquist is likely involved, but he 100% believes that this can be solved just by someone coming forward and admitting that they know something, they saw something. This is still an open investigation in the Chicago Police Department. Still open. Still remains unsolved. After all this time, still unsolved.
I'm just curious on why, what is so special about these 2 girls that this was the largest search in history still today?
Probably because Elvis put his stamp on it.
I mean, wasn't like that before he even came and put out a plea for it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not until he
well,
put his plea out saying, if you're a good Presley fan,
right.
go home to your mom so she stops worrying.
But, you know, also that time, well, no, he was, I don't remember right, correct, if I don't remember correctly, if he was huge into law enforcement at that point, because I know throughout his career, he did do some stuff in the DEA. He was obsessed with, like, law enforcement, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, that, who knows, maybe it was his star power. They're like, okay, they got him on back in this, we need to get every man out there. But other than that,
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to downplay it, what made them so special
Right.
for to have this many officers out?
Right.
Even if Elvis even fucking said anything, you know, would they still done that if he wouldn't have put this plea out?
Right. And you never know. They might.
Right.
Chances are probably not.
And like with the crime boss ties, you know, it's, yes, Chicago police is very corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
To the point with the crime bosses. I'm sure there's still crime bosses in Chicago like this still today.
Yeah.
But still, I don't think they would be putting that many people out if they had one of their people involved with the murder of these two girls like that.
Yeah. Well, think about the Oakland County child killer.
Right.
This was a string of children.
Right.
Like, children. Like, okay, so I didn't put their ages in. Barbara was 15.
Right.
Patricia was 13.
Right.
So still very, very young. But like 7, 8-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
different. Not too different, but different.
Right.
And there were 4 of them. It had also at one point been linked, well, they thought John Wayne Gacy
Right.
was linked to that. And you know the crazy shit that could have brought.
Right.
There still wasn't that many police involved.
I know.
With a notorious serial
Yeah, with a high
killer.
profile killer like that possibly involved with it.
Right.
But still, what I just that's the one thing I was curious about is like, why is it this many officers, this much resources are being used for 2 teenage girls that went off with 2 men?
My guess
Is other than the fact that Elvis
the
said
star
so.
power.
Yeah.
Because Elvis put his used his star power for good.
Right.
I mean, that's what he was trying to do. That's my guess. There's no way to know.
Right.
That's just my guess.
That's probably all it is, and I'm just looking into it way too much.
Probably.
It's that true crime brain kicking in.
Oh. But that's
I
my
got-
story for the
I
week.
got nothing else on that.
Me neither. That was a lot of yapping.
Sarah now has her PhD in yapology.
Yeah.
And it only took her 91 episodes to get it. But anyhow, I think it's time we get out of the Emporium for the day, Sarah. What do you think?
I do too. My jaw's
All right.
creaking.
So until next time,
Remember to creep it real.
and stay spooky.
Join our Facebook group by searching Macabre Emporium. Like and subscribe on YouTube at Macabre Emporium Podcast. Follow us on TikTok at Macabre Emporium Pod. Follow us on Twitter at Macabre Emporium. If you have any stories of the paranormal, your local true crime, or weird history that you would like us to look into and possibly do an episode on, email us at macabreemporiumpod@gmail.com. And remember to follow, rate, review, and share whenever and wherever you can to help us grow our podcast.